Hello everyone, and welcome to Module 5, and it's good to be with you tonight, well today, or maybe this weekend I guess, now that I think about it, based on when you're going to be watching the video. Anywho, I'm so glad to be with you guys again. I'm looking forward to this COVID thing getting behind us and us being able to resume some level of face-to-face interaction. I think there's so much value in being together, and especially at the master's level, and being able to dialogue on just concepts and topics and really take away some real key learning, important learnings from those kind of experiences. I get the benefit of the online experience and not having to travel and being able to work at your own pace, and so I know we're going to end up with the best of both types of modes in terms of delivering the content, and so looking forward to seeing where this all goes. So but ending another semester, we're 25% the way through, we'll be done. Before we know it, it'll be Christmas and snowflakes will be falling. Maybe not so much in Texas, but definitely snow will be falling and Santa will be coming down the chimney before we know it. So Module 5, the topics that are covered in Module 5 are really around contracts, antitrust, and corporate and legal issues around corporations, and it's really important content. And I think for the healthcare manager, it's so critical to really understand about contracts. And so you want to make sure when you're thinking about contracts that healthcare settings have partners that are vendors, they have stakeholders, they have customers, and all of those relationships are governed by contracts. And so really want to introduce in this module the basics of contracts, components of the contract. We'll look at the different components of them, what conditions can be executed to get out of a contract, and so all that'll be really important. And you know, when you think about the contract process within an organization, companies have huge legal teams that really focus on making sure that contracts are right so that we can minimize risk within an organization. I know when I was in my role as an executive within healthcare management and had responsibility for contractual arrangements and signing contracts, I would never even think about signing a contract unless it had been reviewed by legal, that they had their fingerprints all over it, and that basically somebody would hand me a pen, say read the thing, make sure you understand it, and then sign it, because the contractual language is so important and has so many legal implications and ramifications if it's not executed correctly, that you always want to be friends with your legal partners. And so that's probably my single most takeaway for you, is to make sure you are friends with legal if you're engaged with either reviewing, managing, or signing contracts. And so your role, if you are, is really to minimize risk. And so first we want to make sure that you understand the elements of a contract, what a contract is, and then how do you govern the contract. I think so many times we spend a lot of energy on doing the back and forth with the two legal teams on both sides of the contract, and then it's executed and then it goes into a file drawer. And I think many leaders forget that contracts have requirements that need to be monitored throughout the life of the contract. So for example, performance guarantees. Contracts have different conditions that both parties need to adhere to, and oftentimes, and many times in large companies, the large companies do not govern their contracts to make sure that the vendor partners adhere to their requirements that are clearly outlined in the contract. And so you want to make sure that we're understanding not just the components of the contract, but we're actually managing the contract. And then you want to understand how to get out of the contract if necessary. That could be an issue that pops up, and so you'll want to understand what those reasons are and options are for you. And then you want to be, lastly, I think, around contracts as a manager of people, if you're in that role of hiring, making hiring decisions, that you understand that things that you say, things that you intimate, particularly around the hiring process with candidates, can be construed as a contractual agreement. And so you want to be very careful and make sure you understand how your organization views the employee agreement, how the employee handbook plays a role, where it can or cannot be looked at as a contract. And so those are very important components to understand. And then the second part of the module really revolves around corporate structure and the legal implications of corporations. And so there's huge legal infrastructure that many people in an organization aren't dialed into that really govern the organization and how it runs from a legal perspective. There's corporate authority, who has decision-making rights, how are things pushed through the organization, how are decisions made, who's responsible that the financial management of the organization is above board, and that things are being adhered to from a legal and a regulatory perspective. And so there's a number of boards and committees and structures that are in place within organizations to ensure that corporations operate from a financial perspective, a fiduciary perspective, and also from an ethical and a legal perspective. And so you want to understand that there are a number of complex components to corporations, and you also want to understand how they're structured. And so there's a written assignment, this module on corporate structure, and so you have a chance to think through that from your organization. And then taking into consideration the components of ethics and compliance when you look at the oversight and the governance of an organization. How are you and we making sure that our corporations and the organizations that we're involved with operate ethically and from a compliant perspective? And then lastly, I think you want to be able to really articulate the difference between a for-profit and a not-for-profit organization, particularly those of you folks who work for a not-for-profit health plan like Blue Cross Blue Shield. What makes it different? Why is there a decision that has to be made by a board whether or not a corporation is for-profit or not-for-profit? And the Blue system across the country, those kinds of decisions have been made, and they're still being made. When you look at the Anthem organization composed of all for-profit entities, the HCSC organization composed of not-for-profit, you want to understand, at least from a high level, what those mean. So it's a great module, it's great content. I know I'm enjoying it up to this point. It's been excellent, and I hope you're learning some things that you can take away and put into practice in your day-to-day work, and we will look forward to catching up again. Have a great module, and we'll look forward to our next time together.